Welcome everyone to another edition of the Classic Comic Archive, a series where I recap and review many of Marvel Comics' most seminal early issues. Our story for today is Tales of Suspense 41, cover dated May of 1963. This issue marks the first appearance of Doctor Strange. But not the one you're thinking of. The Doctor Strange of this story is an evil scientist and bears no relation to the hero of the same name. The issue was written by Stan Lee and Robert Bernstein, drawn by Jack Kirby, inked by Dick Ayers, and lettered by Marty Epp. Our issue opens up with a striking splash page, showing our titular hero struggling against the evil instruments of Doctor Strange. Yet before we can witness such an epic confrontation, we must first travel to the charity ball of a children's hospital. It's there that millionaire playboy Tony Stark is being called upon the stage, where it's announced that he's donated $100,000 towards the construction of a new wing of the hospital. Stark himself is then given a chance to speak, where he announces that he's arranged for Iron Man to entertain the hospital's sick children the next day, in a televised demonstration of the hero's powers. Thus Stark is applauded for his generosity, although none suspect that the playboy himself is Iron Man. He then leaves the stage and begins dancing with his date. She remarks that she never knew he was so charitable, but also wishes he'd devote some of that same time and energy to their romance. Stark agrees with the sentiment and takes her out for some alone time in his car. There, she plainly asks him if he's ever going to truly fall in love. But he replies that he simply hasn't any time for love, as we enter a montage of the millionaire's extraordinarily busy life. First we see him as the weapons developer, who's overseeing the installation of a revolutionary atomic naval cannon. Then as the medical researcher, whose flesh-healing serum is being successfully tested on a chimp. Next as the astronautical engineer, whose newly developed alloy shell is preventing radiation from penetrating a space capsule. And finally as the defense contractor, who's demonstrating a powerful new machine gun to military officials. Yet this is merely the life that Tony leads publicly. As the invincible Iron Man, his adventures are even more astonishing. Take for example the many bank-robbing gangsters he defeats. Or the foreign spies he exposes. Or the would-be disasters he prevents. Or even the alien invaders he sends fleeing back to the stars. Yet beyond it all, Tony Stark is still just a man, and one with a damaged heart, as he constantly needs to recharge the mechanical chestplate that's keeping him alive. But with this backstory now firmly established, the issue finally returns to the present, where Stark's dropping off his date for the night. She asks the playboy when she'll see him again, to which he tells her that it'll have to be when he's next in town. Although in truth, she'll likely be seeing him as Iron Man on national television the next day. And so that's where the issue jumps to, as we see the hero arrive at the children's hospital to entertain its young patients. With his opening act he uses his transistor-powered jets to hover in mid-air, from where he next activates his suit's powerful magnets and hoists up several cars. But Iron Man amazingly keeps them suspended in mid-air and manipulates his magnets to make them spin around and then twirl in orbit. This is just the first act of presumably many, but the issue then jumps forward to the hero's last. It's a demonstration of the invincibility of his armor, as a pair of soldiers load a nearby cannon to shoot at him. But first they prove just how powerful the weapon is, as they use it to destroy a brick wall that's 2 feet thick. Thus with the wall's destruction, the soldiers next aim the cannon square at Iron Man and fire. Yet amazingly, Iron Man harmlessly catches its cannonball as though it were a toy. The invincible hero then completely crushes it between his arms and offers its broken shards as souvenirs to the sick children. With that, Iron Man's demonstration is over, and the reporter who'd been broadcasting the event prepares to sign off. Yet just before he does, he interestingly comments that with Iron Man's amazing display of power, the only person who could possibly rival his might is the villainous Doctor Strange, who's luckily in a maximum security prison. And thus the issue shifts focus to this Doctor Strange, who's watching the broadcast while working in his prison's TV and radio repair shop. Yet the villain doesn't plan to stay there long, as he's hatched a scheme to escape. It turns out that the children's hospital is only a mile away from the maximum security prison, a close enough distance that with the proper device, Iron Man's armor can be electronically hijacked from afar. Thus we learn that Doctor Strange has crafted such a device out of modified TV and radio parts. But to use it he must first return to his cell. So he feigns a bout of vertigo. And is thus escorted to his room to rest. It's there that we learn a bit of Doctor Strange's backstory, as he reveals that at some point in the past, his mountain laboratory was raided by US paratroopers. While the evil scientist was ready for the soldiers, he was freakishly struck by lightning before he could attack them. The strike temporarily paralyzed the villain and gave the paratroopers an opportunity to apprehend him. Yet since that day, he's been feigning vertigo as an alleged side effect of the lightning strike, for if he didn't pretend to have such an affliction, he would surely be confined to an isolated maximum security cell. And although the lightning strike did not give Doctor Strange vertigo, it actually had the even more bizarre effect of increasing the electrical energy of his mind. Thus we finally see the evil scientist activate his device, which emits ultra-low frequency waves that can affect Iron Man. And sure enough, the hero suddenly begins reeling from a massive headache as a commanding voice echoes within his mind. It's the voice of Doctor Strange, who somehow turned Iron Man into a helplessly obedient servant. Thus the villain orders his invincible pawn to storm the nearby prison he's being held in. Iron Man obeys the command without hesitation and crashes through the prison's gates. The guards are powerless to stop him, but for once actually realize that he's in a trance and don't just assume that the world-famous hero has suddenly turned evil. Regardless, Iron Man then maneuvers to Doctor Strange's cell and tears down one of its stone walls. With that, the now freed villain leaps onto Iron Man's back and orders the hero to fly away. With this first step a success, Doctor Strange takes a moment to muse about his wider plot to take over the world. Yet as much as he's simply an evil mastermind, we learn that Doctor Strange is also motivated by a sincere love for his daughter Carla, whom he wants to afford the riches and wonders of the world. To this end, he orders Iron Man to land over an area of wilderness and then leaves the hero to continue his plot undisturbed. Thus a few hours later, Iron Man finally breaks free of Doctor Strange's mind control and finds himself on a backcountry road with no memories of his time as the villain's pawn. It's also at that moment that several policemen arrive. They make no attempt to apprehend the hero, but do take a moment to tell him what he'd unwittingly done, to which a furious Iron Man swears vengeance on Doctor Strange. Yet the issue then jumps forward weeks later and to the private island headquarters of the villain. There he's outfitted himself in a rather gaudy costume and has assembled together many of the world's most sinister scientists and power-mad military officials. Also there is Strange's daughter Carla, who seems to just be a normal girl and is actually rather alarmed at her father's machinations. But Doctor Strange disregards any of her concerns and moves forward with his plan. And so later that evening he and his cabal detonate a 200-megaton bomb in outer space. The ensuing explosion is powerful enough to be seen all over the world, yet Doctor Strange truly captures the planet's attention when he hijacks every single TV screen and broadcasts an ultimatum. Every nation must surrender to him within the next 24 hours, or he'll destroy the world with countless bombs, each as powerful as the one detonated in space. But of course the nations of the world are not going to give up so easily. They somehow discover the location of his secret stronghold and begin an aerial bombing campaign to destroy it. But Doctor Strange has erected an invincible force field around his headquarters, rendering the bombs useless, and himself confident that his plan is a success. But of course Iron Man can't sit idly by as this is happening, so he somehow acquires a submarine and stealthily approaches the villain's stronghold with it. He then places himself into the ship's torpedo port and is launched towards the island. Yet Doctor Strange had foolishly forgotten to extend his force field underwater. Thus Iron Man is able to make it to the island and use a powerful drill to break into the villain's lair. Then guided by sensors within his suit, he arrives at Doctor Strange's exact location and emerges from under his feet. But moments before Iron Man's arrival, we see Carla express her discontent to her father as she derides him for being so evil. Doctor Strange is genuinely upset by the remark, as his work has all been for her. Yet the two don't have a chance to hash out their feelings, for as described earlier, Iron Man arrives to defeat Doctor Strange. The hero declares that he's going to short-circuit all of the villain's electrical equipment by destroying a nearby generator. But Doctor Strange warns Iron Man that if the generator is destroyed, its destruction will cause his own power source to malfunction. Yet Iron Man's choice is obvious, and he smashes the machine. But as predicted, the hero collapses as all of the electricity in his suit is drained from him. Thus Doctor Strange begins to gloat, for even though his scheme has been foiled, it seems that he's finally defeated Iron Man. He remarks that even a single electrical spark could jumpstart the hero's armor, yet after he destroyed the generator, the island is completely devoid of electricity. But in that moment Carla notices a nearby flashlight, inside of which are 2 dry cell batteries. And so in an act of courageous defiance, she tosses the flashlight to Iron Man, who uses the batteries to revive himself. Yet the hero needs a few seconds to fully regain his strength. It's in that time that Carla actually apologizes for betraying her father. Yet Doctor Strange is surprisingly not that angry and tells her that he only hopes she'll one day realize what he sacrificed for her. Yet with that, he flees, only moments before Iron Man's systems are fully restored. But back outside, the Stronghold's force field has disappeared, allowing the world's militaries an opportunity to invade. Doctor Strange has escaped, but his cabal of evildoers are all apprehended. The issue subsequently ends as we see Iron Man consoling Carla, who's understandably distraught at all that her father's done. She asks the hero why must her father use his genius for evil. Iron Man doesn't know, but he does remark that he did do one good thing. Gift the world with a lovely and courageous daughter. That concludes the Iron Man story in Tales of Suspense 41 and another episode of the Classic Comic Archive. But as always, I would like to offer a brief review of this issue. Overall, I thought that this was a fairly average and unremarkable story. Nothing was particularly bad about it, but at the same time nothing really sticks out to me either. The only thing I want to touch on is the conflicting nature of Doctor Strange. At moments the character's relationship with his daughter was actually quite compelling, and it made him the most personal and genuine of Iron Man's villains so far. Yet at other times he was portrayed as such a generic mad scientist that it's hard to even believe in this relationship. Nowhere in the issue was Doctor Strange's threat to blow up the planet described as a bluff. So are we actually expected to believe that he'd blow up his beloved daughter and everyone else on the planet just because he wasn't made king of the world? It just doesn't make much sense. And thus I'm not surprised that Doctor Strange makes very few further appearances, and neither am I disappointed, as I think there are a number of other villains who pull off the evil genius motif better. But in any case, let me know what you thought of this issue and the video, and feel free to suggest other classic comics for me to cover. Thanks for watching.